make sure that you're achieving more. You're like achieving your life. So it's really impactful to do.
Yeah, and they're those moments that make you do it.
Sit by the river.
Are we recording yet, or are we?
Yeah, we're on. Let's go.
This is Jack.
No.
This is Jack Bloomfield. Thanks for catching up with us. And yeah, like I said, I couldn't believe I'm asking this because I feel like I was 18 the other day. But what's it like to be 18 now in this day and age?
I think I've probably got a bit of a biased perspective on the whole thing because I'm slightly different. But I think I would not want to be in grade 12 this year, and thank God I finished last year. I would not want to be, school formals cancelled, valedictories cancelled, schoolies, like literally all the stuff you got look forward to as a senior school leaver. Literally has all been dumped. So I can tell you now, it'd be an interesting time, and I think for anyone else that's just trying to find their footing in the world, it doesn't really make things any easier, all things considered.
Yeah, are you still friends with like people you went to school with? Like, are you in contact, or are you kind of like getting into like older circles, if you will, as you've like gotten into business? And
I try to keep them both pretty separate, as in obviously I've got most of my contacts that can get me somewhere or have got me somewhere have certainly been people who are twice my age, and that's certainly come a benefit. But in terms of just being able to go out on Saturday night, for example, or go have a good time or something like that, of which I put a big purpose on trying to do, is you don't want to look back in 5 years' time and go, I wish I'd done this or I wish I'd done that. And most of them, still my own age, which is fantastic. But you kind of get to a point where you've been through school with enough people to know who are your friends and who aren't your friends. So it's just all about picking who those are, who kind of who do you get along best with, and just kind of doubling down on
the
those
friends that I guess encourage you versus like why you're trying to do that.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. And you can get a feeling from that type of person from minutes of meeting them. So let alone going to school for years with them. So
well, I'm sure like as I've gotten like older, and it sounds funny, but I'm 25, but I'm sure and that's what I find so strange about your age is like you've had to learn these things at a quicker rate, whereas I like kind of started to learn them now when maybe you're doing things a bit different than people your age because of your financial situation or whatever it may be. It's harder to kind of relate, and then you kind of feel like you're distancing yourselves unintentionally. The conversations change. No,
they do, and you do have to put you do purposely have to, I guess, as bad as it might seem, tone it down slightly when you are talking. You're not going to be talking about your big achievement or the big goal for the day or what you have achieved or who you've spoken to or who you connected with or what deal you got pushed through. Like, you just kind of dumb it down, and I think it's a good thing as well because especially in Australia, for example, as much as success is looked up to, you've just got to be very careful in terms of what you're spruiking, what you're talking about, how well you say you're doing. And I think it just adds a level of humility and, I guess, humbleness to me, which I think is super important. And I know that I've got friends that can always bring me back down to earth. Ones that encourage me.
They're good for that. They're really good for that. Declan especially. I thank him every day.
Chop him down. Mate, he used to be a foot taller.
so literally as well.
But no, that's like tall poppy syndrome's a massive thing in Australia. And I think sometimes a lot of us go too far with it. If someone sticks their neck out, like they get doubt, and how did that ever happen in your life growing up? Like, like you're full of shit or anything like that?
Oh, look, I think it happens to everyone.
And I think it's a reflection of themselves because they're like, oh, I couldn't do that, so surely he can't do that.
Well, it's funny because and as I say, I had it pretty good during school, as in, a generally supportive cohort and all that, and I went to Churchy in Brisbane, so,
sometimes that's really hard to find for kids.
It is, and I think some kids have it better than others, and I just think it's how you go about it. And I mentioned before in terms of, keeping things to yourself, not going out there and spruiking what you're doing. I think the dynamic in the US is certainly a little bit different, but here in Australia, if you can kind of keep things toned down and not be doing a business or whatever for the sake of trying to impress others, you're just doing it to, impress yourself maybe or whatever that might be. If you're just doing it for yourself and not trying to go out there and tell everyone, all the intricate details of why you're better than them, you really won't have a problem. And I think that a lot of people get caught in that trap of just trying to do it to impress others. And as soon as you're going around telling everyone how much better you're doing than them, the only natural reaction for that person is going to be to pull you down. So if you can avoid it.
It's the wrong metrics these days. Like, headcount is not as important as it used to be. Like, we don't want to, why run a 100-person company if you turn over 10 million a year when you have a 10-person team that's highly educated, specialized, and can do an amazing kind of outcome? Like, that's, to me, is way more appealing than having a headcount, a huge office, and your side office nowadays. Like, it's not the same, I guess. It impresses maybe your friends and your parents, having a bunch of staff.
Yeah, it does. Look, I think it depends. It's all. I think it's all different to everyone. Some people might be impressed by headcount. Others might be impressed by whether your office is 100 square meters or 500 square meters. I mean, that might impress some people. But I guess for anyone who's truly in the game of building something great. No one's really going to be impressed by any of that. You'll find a lot of people who, are people who kind of stick to their day job, influenced by a lot of different factors and kind of don't get as far as they want in life, will be influenced and will be, kind of look at the wrong things and measure the success by the wrong things, whether that's dollars earned in the first 5 years of a business, whether that's, as you say, how many people you can gather when you're turning over $10 million. You don't just hire 100 people for the sake of looking good. You hire 100 people because that's what you actually need. So if you're looking at the right things and you're looking to, actually grow a business to the point of success, don't do it for others. Do it for yourself and do it for the right reasons.
Yeah, I think it's easy said, but you can somehow, everyone falls into the trap almost. Like there's some level of like keeping your books clean and everything else, which is why I'm super curious. Like you obviously met Gary Vee and Grant Cardone as well, I take it?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You probably met them and realized they're just like normal people, which is was that kind of a weird experience? Like,
well, I think as we mentioned before we even started the podcast briefly, everyone that you meet is a normal person, no matter how successful they are, no matter what they've achieved, no matter, what they're moving to achieve in their own life. Everyone is normal. They got the same problems and same insecurities. As much as you don't sit next to Gary Vee and talk about his problems in life, his insecurities, and what's his biggest challenge, you kind of get the point that they are the same as everyone. And I hope that people, when they meet me, for example, realize that I literally am the same as everyone else, and so is Scott Morrison, for example. We all are the same. It's just some people have varying degrees of success.
Yeah.
So I think, it's interesting, but I think they just, you'll learn very quickly as soon as you meet these people that they are just the same. And it's liberating because then you realize that you could do what
it's what's possible.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
You can do it yourself.
They are born with some superhuman ability. Some people are better than others. Obviously LeBron James was given some sort of ability. Most of us aren't. But, you just got to pick what you're good at and run at it. If it's not basketball, it could be business, for example. If it's not business, it could be public speaking. If it's not public speaking, it could be writing. Like you just got to find your thing and then just run at it.
How do you think you found yours? Was it the money factor? You just kind of felt bored at home and you're like, I'm at school, but I'm not starting yet. I'm kind of just stuck.
Yeah, well, for context, I know we haven't really introduced what I do. So I started very young at 12, selling things online. Started drop shipping at 15, so selling more things online, but kind of to a bit more of a grander scale. Took 6 months to even make a sale. I learnt off YouTube. I came across dropshipping at 15 because I was watching YouTube one day and realised that there was this kid who was, I think he was 21 at the time, and I was 15, and he was making all this money and just from the US. And I was like, wow, okay, I've done marketing before. How hard I built a website. How hard could this possibly be? And there was an element of being at home, being bored, wanting to do a bit more. So then figured, well, all right, let's take a shot and see how it goes. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I had 6 months to make a sale. I had $500 I got from mowing lawns next door. Lost every single dollar of it trying to run my first Facebook ad.
spend. Yeah.
In ad spend.
Easy done. Yeah.
Oh, it's easy. Like you can literally blow it in the
You
day.
can burn it. They'll happily take your money.
Of course they will. If you're trying hard, you can lose it.
Good luck
in an
contacting
hour.
support to.
Well, they don't care. It's just called you're bad at marketing. So, which I clearly was. So I think it was a case of, pushing through. In 6 months, made the first sale, and it was only $30, and it was for a carbon fiber.
But it was that feeling when it sold. You were just like, someone I don't know just bought this on the internet.
Of course it was.
Which is a magical feeling.
Well, even too, it's funny enough because I thought that an adult has actually bought this from me, which means that I am selling something to a person who is probably twice my age and somehow finds enough value in what I'm selling to buy it. Like, I don't know, to some people that doesn't really mean much, but for me, and I think for anyone else who's probably the younger end of the spectrum, it does mean something. And it was huge. And I figured, well, if you can do one, why can't you do 2 and 3 and 4? So I just kept learning, kept iterating, kept figuring out what I was doing wrong, kept learning from my mistakes, and really just went from there. And it scaled up pretty quickly, quicker than I thought it was going to, which was fantastic, and started doubling down big time. And by this point, obviously, we're still in school. I was only in, I think it was grade 10. Yeah, I was only finishing to the end of grade 10, and that was also when all the media stuff started to happen as well, which is moving into grade 11. And that was a big shock. It was a big change because I went from the philosophy of not telling anyone, not that I was trying to keep it a secret, but just not going out there and telling everyone because I was afraid of what people were going to think. And then it went from like no one knowing apart from mum and dad and a couple of my close friends to like literally everyone knowing. And it was difficult at times, as in not because people were saying anything, but I almost took it on myself as in what are people going to think? Like trying to overthink it. And I didn't really know what to expect. So that was pretty cool. And then obviously I've started Disputify, which I'm sure we'll talk about, in the next half an hour or so.
So was it like, with the news articles, was like that, did you have because you obviously, I have a plan, I'm sure you have a plan. Was it you wanted to create a personal brand and that's what got you out of kind of going on these shows? Or you just like, the press kind of came to you and you're like, wow, like I'm just going to go with the flow. Like you just, you had a plan with it and you're like, I could direct this and kind of create my own personal brand that I can use in a way?
Well, as I say, I didn't really want a person. The idea of a personal brand did sit well with me, as in like it.
You were comfortable. You're like, if they're going to put it in front of the camera, I'm going to rise to the occasion per se.
Yeah, but as I say, I was very aware of the drawbacks of that as well. Like I knew the positives and I knew the negatives of both sides. So as much as I was interested in doing it, there was also the hesitation of like, you know, obviously the fear of everyone's going to think, and everyone then knowing what I'm doing, everyone knowing how much I'm making, everyone knowing what like just all the downsides of doing it was, you know, probably actually outweighed the upside at the time. And anyway, so it was probably more of a fact of, okay, it's in front of me, why not? Let's have the opportunity. Reason I actually agreed to the first news.com.au article was because I thought it'd be good on a CV in a couple of years' time if I ever needed it. So that was my thinking, and I thought it would be on page like 5 or 6 or something like that, and never thought for a second it would ever be anywhere near the front page, and got published, and I only found out it was live because one of Mum's friends texted her and said, I had no idea Jack did any of this sort of stuff. And I looked at it, I was like, oh my gosh, what have I done? And like that was the weekend that it went from the Friday no one knowing to the Monday everyone knowing.
What was it like coming back to school that Monday?
Well, that was it. As in, it was, as I say, I probably overthought it that weekend, as in like a bit of a, was everyone going to think? You know, kind of like, what am I going to do? I don't know. It was interesting. It was only really a thing for a week, as in people.
And it became yesterday's news.
Exactly. And that's what I had to keep telling
myself. Then you realise that and you're like, oh, this is how it works. It's
as in no one actually cares anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a hard part of the content. Like when we were starting our businesses, I felt we didn't have like enough to contribute or talk about. And then now we're like 4 and 3 years in, we're kind of like, right, you just kind of get it down pat, and then you put things out and you realise people either care or they don't.
Yeah, exactly. No, and I think it was important too, because, and that's for good things and bad things. And I think that if you're going to do something bad in your own life and you try to think, well, are people going to forget about this? They're going to get past this or whatever. You know that it's just literally, and I thought it was going to be, and it was. It was a weak news cycle in people's minds, and it kind of everyone just moved past it. And obviously everything kept happening from that, but it kind of became the same story anyway in everyone's head in school. So for me, it was really only a week of questions, and then from there it just died down. Yeah.
And obviously,
fantastic.
Obviously Shopify and stuff has like changed a lot. Like the margins are maybe a bit thinner than they used to be back in the day. And it's not as easy to drop ship. I read somewhere, and I'm sure like it's like I could say something a year ago and then it's out of date today. Do you still kind of follow like trending products, or are you more like in the space where you like you go home, you sit, you do deep research and find out what the next thing is per se, and then kind of experiment, A/B test, and then that's the next product you launch and you go from there?
Are you still doing the e-commerce stores?
Yeah, so I actually stopped in every March. So I sold every one of them. Yeah, so okay. I gave it all up, sold every one of them. Reason being, and we'll get into it
later.
later.
What's the process to sell an e-commerce store?
Oh, it's literally easy.
Is there like websites that you can sell them on?
Oh, yeah.
You show your revenue.
It's like Shopify Marketplace, which is the main one.
Oh, really?
It's really cool. You should go on it. You'd love it.
I barely even buy products. I don't know what. This is all gibberish to me.
You can have a nice stalk through all the good Shopify stores.
It's crazy what some of them make. You see something, you're just like, what?
Yeah.
Like the price and the revenue, and you're like, how?
Well, even too, it's like even.
So it's like going on realestate.com.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, even too, realestate.com doesn't show all the prices. Like you don't know historically what the house was sold for, what the house could actually do.
You know all of that on.
But you know all of it on Shopify Marketplace, and like it's even good for like inspiration for no one who's ever built a store before. Just going on, as you mentioned before, like just saying, wow, this made X amount of dollars. This is getting.
Were they in Australia? Do you know what the type of people bought your store, or do you not really have that contact with them?
People who bought my store, I think most were in Australia. Then I think there was 2 in the US. So I sold quite a few of mine. So there was.
Oh, how many did you have?
There was 13.
13. Yeah, right. All different products.
All different products, all different genres, all different niches, all different, everything. So it was all.
I think this is making a lot more sense now. So then the course that you were selling tied into that, and you kind of like canned that, or you've just paused it?
Yeah. So and that's why I've been very quiet on all of it for the last couple of months because it's been a balancing act between. I, for the longest time, had the biggest gripe of individuals who, the joke is, if you can't do, teach. So, for example, you'd sell 2 things online and all automatically, suddenly, you're qualified to build a course. It's like, well, no, that's not the case. And I found that for a lot of people that I'd see. And there are a couple of Brisbane people who I see that, looking at and going, seriously, are you seriously building a course? Like, have you seriously done that much? And we're like, come on.
What's your view on course? Like, I suppose that sort of sums it up. But, like, the course thing...
Blows our minds.
It blows our minds. Like unqualified people giving advice to people thinking that's the answer, signing up to it, may or may not get a result. Yet that person who made the course is making a lot of cash.
Look, I think it's as bad as it might be for the individual making the course. it's the one dumb enough to buy it that I think is the biggest thing. Because as much as
Everything out there is free, and you've experienced that with all your learning. It was like you realize that the lessons you learn are so earned.
well, they are, but I think also too, it's an important point that the individual themselves, like as I said, the naive will get conned and the smart will not get conned. Now, for a naive individual to become a smart person, it's just intuition and it's experience. As everyone starts as naive, and you kind of, you go around the block a couple of times and you figure out what's good, what's bad, and then you elevate yourself to a smart person. So I think for some people, as bad as it might be, the individuals themselves doing the courses, which obviously we all have a problem with, it's actually the individual buying the course. Because if they aren't to buy the course from a Brisbane entrepreneur, they'd be buying the course, they'd be getting money scammed from X, Y, and Z, they'd be getting money taken off them by their family for some reason, as in they'll get scammed one way or another if they're dumb enough to buy something like that. So, I mean, if it's not going to be an e-commerce course, it'd be something else. I'd much rather it be actually something that's half educational and they learn their lesson from that and move on and then kind of level up from there. So there's worse ways.
I guess it's better than Afterpay.
Yeah.
As in, what do you mean?
As in like predatory lending and kind of that space as well.
Oh, so you think Afterpay is a predatory lender?
100%.
Why is that?
Because of like the amount of people that basically take money or borrow money, and then Afterpay becomes like the first person that's paid back in the line of like debt, if you will. Like,
True. Okay.
have you? I don't know if you've signed up to it before.
No, I haven't, no.
It is amazing. Like, it'll blow your mind, the software behind it. You go sign in with your Facebook account, boom, there's your line of credit. And you're just like, that
It's not a
felt
line
too
of
easy.
credit. It's don't you pay and then you pay through Afterpay? And
Yeah,
then you gotta
correct.
pay-
No, you go buy the thing. So you buy
you
a
don't
pair of
physically
arm
get a
Williams.
line of credit.
Well, it is.
You've already
It
bought
technically is, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't pay it back, it'll end up on your credit rating as well.
Yeah, right.
Because I think it's underwritten by NAB, if I'm correct. So
Yeah,
it is a
okay.
credit rating.
I
Yeah,
guess-
it's a line of credit.
I look at things from the perspective of, and maybe where like you've kind of like, you've done a lot for your age. Like, even the selling the businesses thing, you may have even sped up the process that someone like Phil DeBella went through in his generation, because that was the timeline. He had to start in the back of a warehouse that wasn't his, roasting the coffee at night, sell it to people during the day, and then 17 years later he was able to sell his business out. But because as everything's speeding up with the technology, you've kind of felt those similar experiences on like a sped up timeline.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I'm in a very privileged position to be able to, I guess, experience a sped up timeline. But I can tell you now that maybe in 10 years' time, if you guys are still doing the podcast and you've got someone who's doing similar things to me, he might even be goddamn 8 years old, for example, probably be
Yeah.
the level that I'm at now, and they'll be even more of a sped up
Oh, look
timeline.
at White
So-
Junior. Have you heard of Whitehead Junior?
No, I haven't.
It's
no.
an online platform for training courses for kids to learn dev all over the world.
Oh, jeez.
It's yeah.
For free, or it's charged?
You pay.
You pay. And it's like parents.
It's backed by Bill Gates. It's backed by Obama. All these massive people, and yeah, parents are paying. It's 18 months old, and it's just blowing up. Like, they're making millions and millions of dollars.
That's excellent.
Yeah, and it's for kids like 6, 8.
I would
It's
be
all online training.
I would be careful about, and I guess my philosophy and theory on coders and learning how to code as a kid. If I had kids, for example, last thing I'd be getting them to do
I love the 18 you're thinking about this. This is great.
Oh, as in, okay. Not that I'm thinking about kids. or
Well,
anything
I've
like
got
that.
kids, so mate, any advice you got, let us know.
Jesus, all right. Well, I'll say my own advice. But the way that I think about coding is, I think that 5 years ago, when all of Australia, for example, was talking about we need to teach kids how to code, coding is so important. Look, I don't think that's the case, and I think that's been disproven 10 times over since between then and now. Reason being is the individuals who are the ones coding aren't the ones who are making the big bucks. It's the people who know how to assemble a team of coders, assemble a team of developers,
And sell that service.
and sell that service to other people. That's where the money is made, and they're the entrepreneurs and they're the business people, and they were the kind of people that these programs were trying to create, because we want these kids to go out there and create apps, which then will make millions of dollars, and then that's a news story out of it. Well, though that never really happened, because those kids just purely learn how to code, never really learn anything else in terms of, well, how do you run a proper business? How do you launch the app? How do you market the app? How do you do all the other stuff involved with the app? Because anyone can make a good app. I mean, you can call up a guy in India, and pay them.
Well, it's pretty rough project management. But
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, you have a hard time project managing, and that's just personal experience.
Me too.
And
me
then
too.
and then get something done for cheap compared to Australia, and you can have the app done in a couple of months. But that doesn't mean the app's going to do well.
No.
That doesn't mean it's going to be successful. As you know, there's so much more involved. So I guess we kind of missed a step, in my opinion, with that. And I think that it's kind of it's changing now, which is excellent. And it's more about, instead of learning how to technically code something on a computer, how do you assemble a good team to go ahead and do it, and how do you actually build the business?
I think those are the rare people. And like, we're in this amazing, unique position that we're all in business. COVID just hit. We've all obviously survived it, and we're going to get out of it okay. But a lot of people are going to be needing jobs after this. Like, it's going to be a huge job market. And whoever can start, like you said, assembling these teams will be the real beneficiaries of like everything.
It is, and I've been very interested in this. It's probably a good piece of advice for general business owners. As much as the COVID-19 has, in my opinion, created a very good opportunity for employers to pick up some really great talent, of which has been let go, you'd find that a lot of the talent would be the individuals of whom, especially at the start of COVID, who were trying to get rid of anyway, could not find a good excuse to get rid of, and now can just blame it on COVID and say, well, sorry, we've run out of money or whatever that might be. There's the door, get out, because I've been trying to fire them for months now. So we've got a job market which is full of a lot of fantastic, highly skilled, qualified people of whom have just been let go because of circumstances outside of their control. But then also too, mixed in with that, we've got some really, really, really interesting individuals of whom, to the eye, appear to be great, great employees and great team members and want to be part of the culture and all that, but actually been let go for reasons that, are very hard to see in a first interview, but have been reasons that these some employees have been trying to get rid of some of these employees for months now. So,
because I'm in recruitment, I see it all the time.
Yeah, true, exactly.
So yeah,
perfect,
it's summed up perfectly. Because
where do you see us going from here? Like, if I could have my way, we'd be moving into more technology-based stuff, renewable energy. We'd be getting the fuck out of gas and oil and everything else. But I guess, do you give time for thought for that stuff? Have you kind of seen how much COVID's affected the traditional businesses, and you see opportunities in that way, and you think we should is that something you're involved in?
Yeah, look, I think if you can pin it down to one thing, it's been the same. I don't think it's changed too much. I think it's still the same. It's just move in the way of technology, and I think. Technology, COVID certainly sped up the process of tech. You look at just simple things that used to be done in person, which now have to be done online, which is pretty much everything. Like Zoom calls, for example. You look at Zoom, you look at Peloton, which I think is that cycling company over in the US, blowing up. Huge. The stock prices surged. And Afterpay, for example. And Afterpay's biggest growth is not, yes, it's in-store merchants, but now it's online as well. As in there was growth, but now there's immense growth in that. So
it's bizarre because we added Afterpay to one of our eCommerce sites. So we sell these things and we're selling one of every single time. People only bought one at a time.
Yep.
Put Afterpay on, lots of 4.
Right.
We just couldn't, we couldn't understand or work out why. We didn't really have a metric to go off. We're just why would someone be possessed to buy more than one of these?
Especially when they probably couldn't afford it to begin with.
Correct.
Yeah.
And now they can justify 4 of the same thing, which we never had happen prior. You could always add more quantity, but it's oh, great, now I can buy for my friends and family, so I'm going to get one. It must just be you're in that state of purchasing and you're oh, this would be hilarious, I'll buy this for them.
Or maybe even too, you could even be in the state of it's not my money. And I think that's maybe a bit of a dilemma.
That's the easiest money spent.
It is, exactly.
Taxpayers.
It's not my money until it turns out to be, the money you then have to pay back, which unfortunately, if you don't, will affect your credit score, your credit rating, and all that sort of stuff. So, and your ability to get your next home. So,
it's all down to decision making. And I've realized as I've gotten older, maybe I developed late with some of my decision making, and I didn't really care when I was younger. And then I played catch up now. But I'm sure you're starting to see the rules of life, if you will. Life can either be really, really easy or really, really hard, and all of your decisions start to compound in the right way. And then you realize you're oh, this is how people do it. This is how people get really successful, is they haven't just suddenly woken up and been I'm going to be the best at this. They've compounded their efforts over and over and over again. And then more good things happen. I'm sure all the time people reach out to you we have, everything like that. Just more opportunities come your way and you're kind of wow, I'm the center of the universe and things are just coming my way. And then you're positive because of it. People are we'd love to work with you, or we'd love to do this. And you've just put yourself out there and it's just compounding over time.
Yeah, well, I think 2 things on that. The first thing is around, waking up in the morning and saying you're going to be the best at this, or the analogy you used. I think take it back to what you mentioned before around Phil DeBella. Yeah, the guy started, as you mentioned before, roasting coffee beans in the back of a warehouse that wasn't even his. He just didn't wake up one morning and say that he wanted to be the best at this, and he might have, but he knew, and whether he knew at the time or not, and this is for every single other entrepreneur who gets somewhere, it's a case of, I want to achieve this, but then also too, the perspective to know that this is not just going to take 2 months or 3 months or 6 months or 12 months. It could take 4 years. It could take 7 years. It could take 10 years. You don't know. And I think being able to not sprint but run the marathon is probably the greatest strength of any entrepreneur. And onto the second point around, when you do get some sort of level of success and you start to become, as you put it, the center of the universe, you would almost start to, you get a lot of opportunities. And I think one of the best pieces of advice that I've ever got is the greatest strength of any entrepreneur is the ability to say no. And I think that if you can just align all your decisions and all the things that you do moving forward in accordance with where you actually want to go, and you say no to everything else which doesn't really play into it, anything else that might give you a short-term win or might, benefit you one way or another, but really doesn't play into where you're moving in 5 or 10 years' time, then that is an answer you should say no to.
You sound like you want to encourage like a lot of young people to get into entrepreneurship. Is that fair to say?
I think if it's right for them, not everyone's cut out to be an
Yeah.
entrepreneur. Just like not everyone's cut out to be a basketballer or a writer or anything like that, as I mentioned before. So I think that my biggest thing, and really what I want to encourage, is people who want to get into entrepreneur, but for some reason don't. And whether that be they don't have enough self-belief or confidence, or they think their parents aren't going to allow it, or anything. There's literally 100 excuses that you could
What if I
possibly
fail?
put. What if I fail? What if it doesn't work out? What if I run out of money? As I say, we could keep going forever on this. So my biggest thing is that, if you literally have a great idea and a will and a way to go ahead and make it happen, you should be able to go make it happen. And if I can be the one that goes out there and shows everyone that you can be a kid who starts a business at 12, who starts selling things online at 15 with $500 and can pull it off and make it into something, then that's really the least that I can do.
Where do you attribute your success to? Like, do you think it was your parents that were a huge driving force? It was just kind of like the discomfort of school, and you felt like my business came from a place of I hated my job. I just hated my job, and then I wanted to be my own boss. And then once I jumped in, I was like, it's a lot harder than I thought it'd be. Mm-hmm. But I was already swimming at that point, so I had to make it work. Do you think it was like your parents that kind of gave you that big step up, or was it yourself? It just kind of, you felt it internally and just watching YouTube and seeing all these things?
I think maybe it was probably parents would have played a part in it. Mum and dad started the business 18 years ago.
What's their business?
So they run tennis centres, of all things.
Tennis centres?
Tennis centres,
yeah, right.
Believe it or not. So as irrelevant as that is to what I do, I think the principles and the core things that I saw from day one, they bought that tennis centre on the outskirts of Brisbane 18, 19 years ago. And we lived above the pro shop for first 7-8 years of my life. So I saw them start from literally nothing. Dad working in the shop for 14, 15 hours a day, and having to get up through family dinners to go down and open the pro shop to check someone in for a tennis lesson or for social tennis at 7 o'clock that night. And I saw all of that firsthand. And I think combine that with just a love of business and always the driving force of wanting to start my own business. I can't explain it. And I don't know whether that was,
And was it an online business just the quickest low entry to get into?
8 years, look on Instagram. I mean, there's a video of me in a chair, right about this chair, with the big back and all that, talking to Dad about, when I was 8 years old, about the transport company I wanted to start, and I was going to employ half the kids at school, and I was going to have 4 planes and 4 trucks, and my cousin was giving me my business partner, and his dad so happened to be a transport logistics guy, so I was figuring out pricing models with him, had the website built. It was just me, and it was and I can't explain it. I mean, I've been asked the question 100 times, like, why? And I don't. And I might know the answer in 10 years' time or maybe 6 months' time. I don't know. It might come to me one day. But I really don't know. And I think it was just a driving force of probably combined of seeing parents and seeing them grow something and seeing how hard they worked and just knowing that was what it was going to take for me to do anything. And then combining that with a love of business and just wanting to start something for myself. Probably mash those two together. Once again, a will and a way to go and make it happen. And off I went.
Yeah, nice. And I suppose everyone harps on about the education system in Australia, whether you're a student, past student, generational, politician, everyone's trying to solve the problem. Mm-hmm. But no one's really coming up with any solutions that's actually going to change anything. And it's a big job. What do you think that needs to change?
Look, I think it's a fundamental system of which has been based on 100 years of experience, and it's been based on 100 years of learning, which is fantastic, but it's still 100 years old. So no matter how many new things you try and introduce into it, no matter how much you try to, modernize it, you can only really do so much until you start to look at the fundamentals of the thing, the pillars of what drives it, and really start to modernize those. You can't just modernize the exterior. You've actually got to get inside the building and fix it up from the inside out. So I think that's probably where they go wrong. And I think that the education system probably primes kids too much to just do the average, the cookie cutter pathway, which is fine for a lot of kids, and I think that's great. But I think everyone has something special inside of them. I think everyone wants to do something more than just the status quo. And some kids don't, some kids do. But I think for the kids who do want to do something more, e.g. myself, at least they should be given the opportunity to do so and shown the pathways that there are out there for them to do so and for them to go do something more. And I think that if the education system can kind of start to point kids in that direction who want to be pointed there, who don't just want to sit through 12 years of school, go to university, get a job, and then just kind of live that job out, have kids, and then retire. If they want to do something else,
What pathways are there? Because like a lot of my pathways has been stuff up, learn, go again.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really, besides like mentors you might create in your own life, I haven't found a pathway like that. I don't know if there's a course for entrepreneurism. I don't know if there's a course that, I don't like it, not an online course, but I don't know if there's like what pathways.
The funny thing is, I think doing an entrepreneur course is maybe a good start. It's certainly not the end. I think the biggest the biggest entrepreneur course anyone can ever do is exactly what you've done, which is do it, stuff up, fail, get back up, and try it again. But I think being self-aware enough in that process to figure out why the stuff up occurred, fix the errors, get back up, try it again, or try something different. It doesn't matter.
I think confidence needs to be increased in kids.
Oh, 100%.
Confidence is lacking.
Yeah.
Big time. And
Well,
I don't know if it's social media. I don't know if
Yeah.
it's the time we live in. I don't know if you can see everything that's going on. They've got it's information. But I think confidence and having that wit about you, but that inner drive, that self-belief. Because even I see it in kids like, oh, no, I wouldn't do that. It's like, what? You're a kid. You got to try everything. But even like, 8, 9, 10-year-olds would be like, oh, no, I couldn't do that. Why?
Well, without trying to solve the world's problems here,
Yeah.
look, I don't know the answer to that. I think, confidence is a big thing. But I think back to the point where you say just enabling kids to try everything. And I think by enabling them to try everything and just have a shot at different things, I think from then, and especially early on, like the age of 8, 9, 10, you can then give them a really good platform to figure out where they want their life to go from there. And I think the same is from age 8, 9, and 10, but then also do it again at like grade 10, 11, and 12, and even after that into university. Like, how do you expect a 17, 18-year-old to be able to confidently pick a university degree that predicts the outcome of their life or what the pathway of the rest of their life is going to look like when they really haven't had experience at all in anything? They never, like, for example, kids are picking to become doctors and they've never, like, as the only experience they've ever had of becoming a doctor is going to the doctor's surgery to get their ear fixed. Like, I feasibly don't get it. And engineering as well. Like, how do you know you want to become an engineer?
A lot of it can be pressure from parents as well. Like, oh, you must go to Nudgee, you must go to Terrace, you must go to these schools because, that's the pathway to go. Because maybe I didn't do it myself and they're going to vicariously live through their kids if they go on and achieve those things.
They are, and I think
that
it's
can be
probably less about school, probably more about just the pathway that they take after that. And I think that if you can just give the kid every single opportunity to try everything at any age, so that at least they know what they're getting themselves into. And I think that, if you can have some sort of trial before you buy or whatever that might look like, in work experience. Work experience is like a dead thing in especially
It doesn't
private
happen
schools.
anymore.
It doesn't happen because it's due to your care issue. Which
Right,
I get,
we had it.
I get the merit of that, but the principle of not having any sort of work experience is just nuts. And then expecting kids to go spend $60,000, $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 starting on a degree, based on what? A brochure? Like,
I
seriously?
feel like the degrees have been exposed even more with COVID, like Zoom classes for 80K.
Yeah, like the
how
one,
can you
not even
justify
that. Like even the ones at like Harvard, for example, like costing $300,000-$400,000 a year. You're getting the same education, as in you're getting the same experience as a community college over in the US, which might cost 50 or 60K.
I think they're really going to struggle to justify that cost.
Oh yeah,
Like it's going to be like, I have no idea. States are a whole different story, but I have no idea. Even like Australia, I guess.
no, the states is just all just amplified. At least in Australia, a bit of the government. It's a bit of the government comps the cost, so the cost comes down. But in the US, it's like the wild west when it comes to fees, and that's why I don't really know any parents who sit there saving for decades for their kids' university fees here in Australia because kids can just go hex it when they get to the age and then go to uni. Whereas
You never thought about uni?
well, hang on, I just finished the point. I was just going to say, in the US, for example, you've got parents who are, saving hundreds of thousands of dollars to send their kids through university. And now there's been a big shift of they've saved for decades, and then now they're getting to a point where their kids are going, I don't see the value in going to the college that you've saved all your money up for. I want to just do a community. I want to just do online courses from X, Y, and Z because I think that holds more value. It's a huge shift. It'll take a couple of years to, I guess, come through, even though COVID's kind of shaken it up to begin with. But I think it's exposed a lot, and I think it will create change, which is good.
Do you follow much along with where the tech giants are at and what they're kind of up to? Like I basically consider myself a reseller of Google products. I put no kind of shame behind that. I'm just like, Google's just a beast. They're a huge company and they provide a lot of services, and I'm just kind of leeching onto their product, if you will. Do you follow along with where the trend seems to be kind of going with like Uber, Amazon, and what they're up to? Like, are you following along quite closely where it's like such an interesting, like, I guess governments just are so slow to adapt to this stuff. Like Amazon's just been welcomed into Brisbane with open arms, and it's kind of like, here we go, here come the factory jobs.
Yeah, well, when I have time, I try to. I mean, there's no harm in keeping up. I think that's really important. What I try to look at, and when I do have time to, I guess, spend time looking at what everyone else is doing, when I'm not focused on what I'm doing, probably the biggest thing is looking where those companies started, because I think it's all well and good to, and I think, even like Amazon, it's amazing how they can just be welcomed to Queensland, open arms.
Tax benefits.
Which all power to the government doing it. I think it's a good thing, and it's better for them to do it than not do it. Okay, great. But I think it's more of a problem of just looking where these companies actually started, and where did Amazon start? Where did Uber start? What did Uber do to achieve hypergrowth? What did Amazon do to achieve hypergrowth? And I think that what everyone should be looking for in these companies is not where they are moving forward now. What they should be looking for is where did they start and how they get to where they are now. And if you can uncover,
you don't think they're monopolies in a way, and almost like crush any competition that enters into the market?
Oh, well, even if they are monopolies, for example, how the hell they get to become a monopoly? I think if you can uncover how that actually happened and then replicate that in your own business if you want to.
Timing, like Google just indexing the internet, what a smart idea, but they weren't the first ones to do it. They just kind of got the leg up and got the better they made the better product.
It is. And the point I'm trying to make is, as long as you can understand how that actually happened, and that might be a way, for example, and that might be the core of it. But if you can understand how, and then if that actually applies to your own business, and you can then take the learnings and principles from what they did to get to where they are today, you will be successful one way or another.
Do you worry for the youth? Like, do you worry for the youth that may end up in the Amazon kind of warehouse working? Like, I'm sure you're aware of like the wage gap and those kind of things. Does that concern you, or is it kind of like they just need to pull themselves up by the bootstraps and work a bit harder?
Look, I actually, funnily enough, I watched the Netflix show last night, The Social
I need to see that.
Dilemma,
I really want to watch
which
that.
everyone was talking
good?
about. It's very good, actually, very good. And it does raise a couple of concerns around, youth and the effect that Facebook has on youth and,
Right.
and the effect that Facebook does have on youth and, everything else in between. And it is kind of worrying to see, and we all knew it was there. I mean, it's not a shock, as in we knew that Facebook was having a detrimental effect on youth because, it cannot be healthy for an individual to spend 6-7 hours a day in front of a phone looking at Facebook, obsessing about what everyone else is doing. Now, most kids don't do that, but there are some kids who do. That is a concern, and that is worrying. So I think it's just a case of there will always be kids who do that, whether we're putting, a newspaper in them, which is talking about gossip things, and, whether that's in the 1970s or something like that, there'll still be people who go read that, and that could be called a problem. I think that there's a problem at every level, but it would be very interesting to see how, one of the things it talks about is fake news, and how, I think the statistic was on Twitter, for example, fake news spreads 5 times faster than real news.
It's more, what's an emotional trigger? It's like an emotional trigger.
It's freaky though, like it's fake, but it's so on the borderline. That could actually be real.
Like Batuta articles almost.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And the reason that actually happens is because the Google, when you speak about the Google algorithm, for example, and the Facebook and the YouTube and all the algorithms, all they're built to do is just ensure...
Show you the most relevant
Well,
thing
just to
you're
keep
gonna
you
engage
attached,
with.
keep you on the app. And if that involves showing you the most relevant thing of what it thinks is going to be interesting to you, it will show it. And if it's getting eyeballs, it's getting people clicking on it, and people are spending more time, naturally, that is going to be picked up and that is going to be shown to more people. So I think it's probably more of a fundamental concern with how these, algorithms work, how these businesses work, because if they aren't showing people relevant content, they aren't showing you things that you're going to want to go click on, then you aren't going to be there looking at their ads. You also aren't going to be looking at everything else they make money from. So it's a very interesting dynamic of how do we dial down this, sensation of Facebook's obsession with fake news, as much as they say they're trying to get rid of it, which they probably are.
It's a big job.
It is a very big job. And how the hell is anything meant to tell the difference between what is real and what is fake? No algorithm can really do that. I mean, you can get close. I'm sure you can get
Not
close.
there yet, but the's not a monetary benefit right now.
Well, there's
per
not.
se.
I mean, there's not. And if it's spreading 5 times faster than real news, I mean, for example, people are going to spend, I think, 5 times more time on that platform reading stuff.
So I love long conversations like this because you can kind of get to the point of what someone's point of view is as well. Like we had the politician on the other day, and it's the most honest chat I've ever had with a politician.
So who was that?
Robbie Katter, Bob Katter's son.
Oh, gosh. Okay.
Yeah. I know.
Do you know him?
No, I went to school with his Bobcat, his grandson.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
And
Yeah.
obviously Bobcat is an absolute character and his son has kind of taken over the party and I've got my own point of view of him. But then meeting him in person, seeing how like much of a genuine nice person he is and even explaining his points of view on gun policy in long form for someone who's like quite anti-guns and then whatever else, he just started to talk about the political system more than anything, was saying that it's used as like a bargaining coy to get more votes. He's like, they'll say we'll bring in a hard policy on guns with no real agenda and then puts in the kind of media and it's like, again, clickbait, and it's a perfect article. It's like he has to then argue the point and look like the bad guy, if you will, when they just bring in some ridiculous bill against farmers or whatever it may be. He's like, it's just to win votes. It's not actually a let's go chase the bikies or let's get the illegal firearms off the street. It's just a political ploy, if you will.
Yeah, okay, interesting. I may as well listen to that. That'd be a good one.
It was like, for me, for someone who was like try and debate me about guns and then him kind of being like, it's not about that. It's about winning votes. I was like, I did not think of that at all.
Jeez.
It's all a ploy. And what about outside of work? Like, what else do you get up to?
Yeah, who is
'Cause your
Jack?
whole life is all about, business this, business that. I suppose it's
Like,
all
are you really just that busy all the time? Is it 10 hours a day, back to back? You just want to learn the next thing and you want to like keep hustling? Or is it kind of like, what do you feel like
do
you're
you go
trying
out
to
on the
work
piss,
towards?
go dates, like, you know what I mean?
I mean, I try to, and when I can. Look, I don't know. It's an interesting dynamic because obviously, I finished school last year. Very involved in what I'm doing now. There's a lot of responsibility.
What are you doing now? You're saying, is it Disputify?
So Disputify. So I started that out of my personal problem with chargebacks and disputes through all the e-commerce stuff I was doing last year. So for anyone who doesn't know, a chargeback is the process of when you identify something in your credit card you don't understand, call the bank up and you complain about it and you say that this wasn't, and most people do it genuinely, which is great. But there is a growing number of people, alarmingly growing as well, of whom will buy things online with the full intent of never actually paying for it. Obviously pay for it up front, they receive it, and the most common thing for them to turn around and do is call the bank and say, for example, it was never delivered. And we'd get this stuff all the time, and we'd put tracking on packages that we'd send out. We'd also do signature on delivery, and we'd be getting thousands of dollars a month in chargebacks coming back, and people who, these packages are tracked, they're signature on delivery. How can the same person be turning around and saying it wasn't delivered? And we'd get repeat offenders all the time. The same people doing it over and over and over again. And I'm sitting there going, this cannot be me with only this problem. Anyway, so then started to do research into it, and sure enough, $29 billion a year is simply lost to everyday
worldwide?
people. Worldwide. Yeah,
Oh, wow.
And that's that's just the physical cost, not including the cost of, you having to then go fight this thing with the bank and the opportunity cost involved with that. Like on average, $2.20 is lost per $1 disputed. So a $50 dispute quickly turns into hundreds of dollars in lost time, but then also too in fees. You get charged $25 or $30 fee straight off the back from the bank. It's just honestly ridiculous. Yeah, no, the merchant gets it. So the money gets, so as soon as a dispute gets put
taken
through, so as soon as a customer calls, bank accepts it, the money gets taken out of the merchant's account within the next couple of days. It gets held in a trust account for 28 days, I believe it is. But then also too, there's a $30 fee that gets tacked on top of that as well.
So bothering the bank.
So for bothering the bank. So it's the full price of the purchase, including shipping, plus the fee. And then you got 28 days as a merchant to respond and say, for some reason, no, I believe this is incorrect, or I believe this chargeback is fraudulent by the customer themselves. Problem is though, 96% of those chargebacks are won in the favor of the customer.
So I love this idea because like you're obviously on the money and you're so right. Like even Amazon has an amazing returns policy that's abused all the time.
Oh, yeah.
What's your product and where's it at, I guess? Like are you developing something?
Yeah. So actually launching next week of all things, which is pretty cool. So
Perfect time to do a promo.
How good.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank the Lord. It's here soon, ladies and gentlemen.
It's soon, No,
We better get this podcast out then.
Yeah, I better say. So the best part is no. So so look,
We can clickbait this for you.
Jack reveals his big secret of how he did it all.
Yeah, well, look, and the good thing is we're not even at a point where we're public. I really don't push it that hard. Probably will start in the next couple of weeks, but it's not something I'm talking about too heavily now anyway. So essentially what we do is we track and tag these individuals who like to abuse these policies and who like to take advantage of merchants. We assign these customers a thing called a dispute score, which is based off their past transactional history. So for example, we've got a dispute score on a customer who's obviously had a bad history. We can then give the forewarning and the heads up to the next merchant that we're a partner with, that this individual has hit, so many times. We don't get that level of detail. We just give them a score of which represents their risk, and then that merchant can make a decision on whether they want to, number one, accept the transaction, take the risk on, or number two, reject it, refund it, and just not deal with the customer.
Amazing. So Stripe has something similar, but it's more for like bigger accounts. It's like
No. So Stripe, and there's hundreds of fraud tools out there. One of them is Stripe Radar. What they look for is customers who have had their cards taken. So, for example, there's a customer in a foreign country using an Australian's card to buy something and get it shipped over there. That is clear fraud. E.g., the IP address doesn't match up, or the shipping address doesn't match up. The card's being used in a different country. It's pretty clear fraud. That's what they're there to stop. What they can't stop is the actual individual using their own money, their own address, their own, everything matches up. It is the genuine person buying this product, but just with the intent of never actually paying for it.
So how does it work then? Like, how do you, say I'm a merchant, I want to sign up with you and use your service. Like, how would it work? You attach it to my store?
Yeah, so we just send as a plug into your store. So we essentially, as soon as a customer clicks confirm order, we get sent that information. We then cross-reference it against what we got. And then if there is no risk that we see, we then return a positive dispute score. So then therefore there's no risk.
They release the product.
We don't get involved in, we can start rejecting transactions on behalf of a merchant and all that sort of stuff. We don't feel we're confident enough to do that yet. E.g., we just don't want to.
Yeah, sorry. So it's like, it comes through, it's like flagged, and then they see the order pop up on their kind of screen. They're like, oh, cool, it's green. I'm going to go ahead and send this out.
Exactly. And that's the best thing, because the average merchant gets the order, doesn't send the product out for, at least 24 hours. So there's a 24-hour buffer in there to, number one, if there's a risk, we would have emailed them or texted them and let them know.
So is it a monthly SaaS product service?
It's a monthly SaaS product.
And what I guess I'm super interested in this, because what are you going to do with all the data? I guess you're going to have so much data from all your customers of all the things they do. Do you have a plan with that yet? Or is it kind of just like back of mind, it's worth something, I'll get around to it?
Look, it certainly is worth something. We are very careful in terms of playing the line of data. At the end of the day, we'd rather, we're very clear that the merchant's data is the merchant's data. E.g., we don't use it for anything else but that, and that's what we're very clear at the moment. We might discover something else that we want to do, and we become open and transparent with the merchants and go, we believe we can provide you a better service through doing X, Y, and Z. Something we're fully upfront with, and something that we'll discuss at the time, if anything.
So was it built? Did you build it here? Do you have a team?
Yeah, so we outsourced, so raised money, quite a bit of money for it.
What's that process like?
So what, raising money?
Yeah.
Oh, well, it's the team question, and then we'll get to the raising money. There we go.
You're trying to cut it
I
out.
know, yeah,
Oh,
it's
sorry.
a good question.
We're just too eager.
Yeah, clearly.
I'm just learning a lot.
Yeah. No,
How do I get money, Jack?
Yeah, I know. It's great. I got it through putting my hand out.
I've got a tin at the door.
Yeah, tin at the door. Yeah,
we require a $10 donation for every episode. Keeps the lights on.
Yeah, so right now, raise money in terms of team and all that sort of stuff, where to get built. We took the approach of just so first of all, built a board of directors, which was non-execs, which is the biggest thing to kind of help guide me and make sure everything was managed properly. They've been really great, and there's 2 of them involved at the moment with me. So there was that. We kind of started to build the team out pretty slowly from there, started developing it very, very, very soon after.
Like a local company, or you sourced your own
So
individuals?
we did third-party developers, but they're actually based in Brisbane.
Awesome.
Which is the most convenient thing.
It is.
So it's been a month-long, 3-4 month long, 5 month long process of getting this thing built. Obviously, we've got to have the ability to ingest large amounts of data, store that data, manage that data, securely manage that data at that, and be able to, obviously provide a score which is accurate and actually, doesn't just screw the merchant over. So
Provide a service, yeah.
Provide an actual service of which they're paying us to do. So essentially the cusp of it. So yeah, we've been doing that, and then we were Brisbane based, which is fantastic, and it's been good because my plan was obviously to move to Sydney and set up there, and then internationally from there as well. It's the obvious thing to do. But it's been great to be able to stay, in Brisbane with family and actually build the team out here and, build a company from here.
How do you plan to market it? Because I find this part really interesting, because SaaS products are obviously...
And sorry, we will get to the fun. We will get to the investment question.
I'm a piece of shit. Doesn't matter what I talk about.
Oh, jeez, come on.
I always do this. I hijack everything.
Yeah, hijack everything.
So I guess with the SaaS product, and I love... I don't know if you heard a guy called Paul Graham. He releases little articles, and he's in the startup community in LA. He just talks about everyone wants to be the Uber, everyone wants to be the Airbnb. It's where, like you said, go back to their kind of starting story. They drove the cars themselves. They brought the air mattresses themselves. Do you have a plan for how you want to market it? Is it going to be one-to-one? Do you already have some people you're going to get in contact with and kind of test from there?
Look, I mean, the go-to-market plan is pretty straightforward. We're starting with an integration into Neato. So Neato is essentially the equivalent of a Shopify, but the Australian version. So they've got 6,500 merchants, of which
So you get access to straight away?
Yeah. So
How do you negotiate a deal like that? Surely they're not just like, oh, great to meet you. Here's our customer base.
Well, as I say, so we don't get all the 6,500. Obviously, the plan moving forward is to, obviously show how valuable we are to a few of their merchants, and then be able to then finally integrate into them. It makes sense for them if it saves the merchants money, makes them look great because they're the ones proactively going out there and solving a problem all their merchants have. We're a company that provide a service to fix that. I mean, it's a win-win for everyone. So obviously, it's my relationships into Neato, which are really helpful, but just going through the normal channel and processes. And at the end of the day, the biggest thing is as long as you've got a great product and a great service which solves an actual problem, you will do well, no matter how bad of a go-to-market plan you have or how bad you can market this thing, obviously to an extent. But you will always do well if you just put in half.
It's not one of those ideas where it's like, we're going to get strangers and put them in your car. It's like, we're going to save you money and fix your disputes.
Well, and that's it. And hence why, I'm so excited about Disputify, because it's not like Atlassian, for example, and not to use them as a prime example, but it's very hard to justify value when you're walking in and saying that, we're going to make your team 15% more productive. Like, number one, how did you get the figure of 15%? And then number two, what is 15% actually worth? And now they're not a company I'd use the example of, but there are many companies which just have a hard time justifying value. Whereas why I'm excited for what we're doing is it's essentially we know how much we can, you tell us how much money you're saving, you're losing to chargebacks and disputes. This is how much we're going to charge you to fix the problem. And this is how much we're going to save you in doing so. Done.
Yeah, I can't pick it apart. Sounds great.
Because Neato would be similar in recruitment. We use Job Adder, and it's like our CRM. And then they have a add-on section. So if you want reference checks, if you want add-ins to your emails, if you want anything, Xero integrates in it, your emails integrate, Words integrate, everything integrates, that'd be similar to Neato. So you would go, is that similar?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Neato have their own app store. We just sit on the app store. That's the easiest way in. And then obviously just work directly through Neato with the individual merchants themselves to, obviously build it out and build customer numbers and all that. Our biggest thing for the first couple of months is not growth. It's not, let's see how we can get 5,000 merchants on by December. Certainly will be the conversation moving into next year. But right now, it's more of how can we make sure what we've built is not going to break. It's actually, providing as much value as we say it's going to provide, and actually doing the right thing. And for us, for me, that's very important because my reputation rides on it. All the investors that have put money with me have an expectation that's going to be the way. So it's incredibly important for me to, ensure that's the case.
Yeah,
What a perfect story. Like, it makes so much sense because there's like the progression of running your own stores, getting real feedback from that, e.g. doing it, and then solving a problem that you had that
And it's
you made
taken
yourself.
you, from 8 to 12, like really from when you were 12 years old when you started your first business. And this has been, a 6 to 7 year progression to get to this point?
Yeah, I never thought of it that way, but technically, yeah.
And I've been in business for 2 years. And do you think with an instant gratification in the world we live in at the moment, that's quite hard for people to understand?
It is, and hence why I mentioned before, and use Phil DeBella as the example. The guy has spent, almost, I don't know how long, but years and years and years and years building, what he's built today. And he started by just doing it out of, as you guys said, in a warehouse. It wasn't even his roasting coffee. I mean, he didn't know how long it was going to take, but he knew, had probably enough conviction in his own mind that things were going to work. Didn't know when, but just knew. So for me, it's taken, pretty much 7. And I think a lot of people look at, Disputify, for example, and think that, well, because I started it in February, March this year, and it's got to where it is now, that's just how long it's going to take them.
Yeah.
Where it's not the case. I mean, there's been 7 years or 6, 7 years of progression before that to get to the point now where I've had the skills to be able to do something like this. So it's all about just putting it into context, and it's not just what it seems on the surface. There is so much that goes into it, and a lot of that's obviously the experience beforehand to be able to pull something like this together.
To even come to the idea of that.
Exactly.
I've got no experience with
well,
e-commerce.
as you said before, it's like the natural progression of all right, this is the problem I have got. How am I going to solve it? Let's go out there and solve it. And I had to have the problem to begin with, and I had to get the stores to a point where it did become a problem because it was only a couple $100 a month. I wouldn't have even picked up on it. It would have been fine. But as soon as you start losing thousands a month, it starts to become a problem. But you had to get the stores there in the first place for it to become that problem.
So will it go off their email, their IP address, their physical address?
Pretty much everything, yeah.
How do you, and that happens from when they submit to buy something, you get that back end information.
Correct.
True. So what was the process in raising money? Because I know it's I consider everything that I've done, it's all been self-funded. But sometimes people consider it the cool thing to do. Let's go get a bunch of cash, let's go on Shark Tank, and then they get an R8 and everything's sweet, and then all of a sudden a couple of years later it's all just bamboozled.
An R8 with the company money.
Yeah.
Oh jeez.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
Like that's a cliche story, but it does happen.
Yeah.
So like, what's the process involved into raise money? And I wouldn't even know who do you go to? Do you like, is there?
Have your parents just stayed out this whole time?
Yeah. What are they?
Oh, I mean, they get updates from me, and I sell, and I can call them up and say I've done this, and this. And it originally, the dynamic with them, it was interesting because I used to get sometimes a little bit annoyed that I thought they should give me more credit for what I'm doing. As in, like, at least like,
Mum, look at me now. Come on.
Look at me now. Like, come on here. At least like be. And she's happy and proud and all that. But like,
But no, like people come up to you in the street and go, "Man, it's crazy what you're doing."
Yeah,
and
like
Mum's like, "Oh, it's cool.
Like
You
that
sold
dude
some
at
shit online."
Bellissimo.
exactly. Like there is no, and as much as that,
That's good though.
exactly. And it triggered me to begin with. But really, as I realized and looked at it, it's like, well, actually, that is the biggest blessing in disguise.
Imagine if
because-
you're getting this media, your parents think you're God's gift. You know what I mean?
Oh,
You're gonna pay our mortgage.
yeah.
This is gonna be great.
Yeah, yeah.
Good on
and
you, son.
You'd be about a 6-month wonder, and you'd be right back to where you started. So, thank God that wasn't me, and thank God that as much as I might have been slightly, never told them about it, so I was slightly annoyed, but never really saw it, and then it's kind of worked out for me, and it's certainly played in my favour. So yeah, no. But sorry, back to the raising money part. So I guess the biggest thing for anyone who's looking to raise money, and you've just got to be very careful. And the example you used before was spot on. A lot of people think that raising money is somehow the cool thing to do, and it probably comes back to what we spoke about at the start of the episode, which was all about how people who believe that they raise money, or people who believe that if they have 100 people in their office somehow are more of a person, as opposed to someone who's started from nothing, self-funded the entire thing, has taken twice the amount of time to grow it, and has now reached a level of success that they as a person are happy with. And a lot of people get that muddled. So I think that if you are in a position where you're thinking about raising money, think very, very, very long and hard about it. Number one, it's hard to do. It's just the case of doing it. But then number two, the level of responsibility that then comes with it. Because not only you're playing with your own money, where you have the ability to stuff up, have a couple of missteps, fall down, get back up, keep going, and have a bit of play in the mud. Really, when you're taking other people's money, the expectation level, as I think we can all agree, goes from 2 to 9. You're under the pump, and you are accountable for every single thing that you do. And I've got some, for Disputify, for example, the investors we have involved are, great people. I do have a lot of leeway to make things work, and I'm not constantly micromanaged. But that's not the case for a lot of investors. A lot of investors are sitting there micromanaging every single step in the process. You do one thing wrong, your head is on the chopping block, and your reputation is ruined forever. And I'm not talking about, you blow all the money on one thing or another. This is a case of hiring the wrong person, and then having to go fire them 3 months later. That's grounds for some investors to say, I'm sick of you, I'm pulling my money out. Like, it's wrong. And I think for any investor who sits there and thinks that, or even just a person who's going to go offer up half of their company for an investor to come in and give them, $50,000 or $100,000 or something like that, it's obscene. Because for any investor who's trying to take half of a person's company, a founder who, it'd be different if the investor's going to be putting some time and effort into the company and, is going to go halves and halves in, in equity and also sweat equity, so it's input into the business. But if the investor is just taking equity so they can feel good, how do you think that's going to benefit the founder? It's not. You're just shooting yourself in the foot from day one, because how is this guy ever going to be motivated to do anything? And as a founder, how do you expect to be motivated when all you know is that half your business has just been taken by someone that doesn't really care about you? All they care about is
like having a boss again
result. It is.
That you don't want, and that's why you left.
Literally is the result. So I think that number one, be very careful about taking investor money. Number two, figure out whether you actually need it. Is there a way to go ahead and self-fund what you're doing? And it doesn't just mean self-funding, e.g. bankrolling everything. Scale down your idea. If you can do it, 100 million calls.
Must be the investors.
Disputify's going off.
Yeah.
Another client.
Another client.
Oh my God.
That's how I put it on silent. And yeah, so look, I think reconsider it. If you can shrink your idea down to become slightly more manageable, that is the better thing to do. And if you can get away with no investor capital, that's fantastic. But I think investor capital is really good at a stage when you have an idea that you believe is going to be the next big thing. You actually know it's going to be the next big thing because you've spoken to so many people about it, all of whom agree and aren't just, part of your naive circle who will always agree with everything you say. You kind of go out and get some other expert opinion and knowledge. And you've done something similar before, and you're confident you are the person to take it to where you think it's going to go. And if you can answer all those questions with a yes, and like, this is going to be me, this
To
is
your
not
core.
my first rodeo, this is something that I believe that even if, it was to turn around tomorrow and we were to lose all the money, that I would get back up and still keep doing it. If you could answer yes to that, sure, go out and take it, because investors see that conviction, they see the confidence, and you'll probably end up with, number one, more money, number two, better investors, and number three, a better product and service, and then everyone wins because you'll actually do well. Investors get their return of 10x what they actually put in. You're making a mozza, and you love what you're doing.
It's win-win.
It would
Simple.
win.
So simple.
Simple, yeah.
So being young, you know how everyone says, don't buy this when you're younger, don't buy this. Obviously, you've gone and got a nice car. Was that just something that you kind of like felt?
Well, I always want a nicer one. So the problem is, it's like you get a nice car, and then there's always a nicer
You see a guy in a nicer car and you go, what
Because I've
does he
seen you
do?
in 2 different cars. So what car do you...
So I got a
Actually
BMW
have.
now at the moment.
Okay.
So I did a lot of promotional work with BMW as well. So then I got a lot of cars through them, and then Mercedes, and then so it's all very good. Problem is though, as soon as you experience any car that's better than your own, like anyone,
hate
it's
your
like
own.
now you just need that car. So it's always, but I just got to keep reminding myself that whether it's a car, whether it's a house, whether it's what you wear, whether it's literally shoes, literally anything, you will never have the best thing of something. So
why chase it?
Yeah.
well, I
We
guess
don't have super yachts.
why chase it? I think it's always good to have the ambition and the goal of getting there. I think that's important. But in terms of sacrificing, long-term results for short-term pleasure, e.g. buying the $200,000 car that you probably shouldn't have bought, e.g. you should have stuck the money into some sort of investment that would have over 20 years paid off tenfold, and if all things went kapoof, you'd actually have some money there to rest on as opposed to a car which is now worth nothing. That is the smarter thing to do. You've got to obviously find in there some tolerance where you can reward yourself and you can spend money on things, and
I don't pick you as much as a drinker, so I think
yeah, well, I mean, drinks are only what, $30, $40, $50. Cars are unfortunately 200,000. So I wish cars were that cheap, but yeah. But to use the example of cars, it's just it's interesting. But once again, as you guys said, you'll never have the best of something. So I guess as much as it's important, just not to chase it, have the ambition, have the goal, but just set out. Actually, the best thing to do is, instead of impulsively just buying things, try figure out over a 6 to 12 month period, what are you going to reward yourself with when, and what is the KPI that you're going to hold yourself accountable towards, and then you go ahead and buy
delayed gratification.
Delayed gratification.
Are you a big
Think a
goal
bit too
guy?
wise. That's just some big stuff.
Yeah, your brain operates very different to what 18.
My brother would be, yeah.
I know 25-year-olds that don't operate like that.
But for how much your phones are ringing, I feel like, do you need to go?
I mean, soonish, but yeah, no.
We won't hold you up too much longer then.
So with we've covered some stuff, but like outside of work, like what do you get up to? Do you have any like
you
hobbies?
read?
I mean, do cardio twice a week, gym twice a week. Like running as well. That's always fun. Probably holiday a bit too much, which with Sundays like 1.5.
How's traveling by yourself when you're younger?
Was Sydney every single week, which was all for business though, but obviously it's still fun because just going on a plane is fun. Traveling while I'm younger,
Like abroad?
well, I never really went abroad, as in, unless it was family holidays. That was always good. But in terms of traveling domestically for business, which was a lot of last year, Mum had to come because I couldn't check into a hotel by myself. So you'd have Mum who'd come down to... I have a day of meetings in Sydney.
Your mum sounds like an angel.
I know, she's wonderful. She's lovely.
Yeah, she had to travel with me.
Do you bring in a
everywhere.
client meeting? So like,
No. So she'd have to sit there. So she'd come down.
That's hilarious.
Oh, they pay for a flight and everything, so
Yep.
she'd get a
I hope
flight
so.
out of it. Yeah, exactly. She made sure of that. So then she'd come down and obviously would stay for the night or something. And so I would have meetings that day, and she'd, obviously works with Dad, so she'd bring computer down and she'd just do work in a coffee shop and meet up at the end of the day, go to the airport and go home. So, I mean, at the time it seemed pretty normal, but even just looking back a year later now and going, oh my gosh, and I was only turned 18 in April. So literally this has been a case of, from April onwards being able to do things by myself, as in, just freely being able to travel. Beforehand, it was a case of just bringing Mum to Sydney and then having a sit in a coffee shop for the day and then meeting up at the end of the day and going home. So.
And you've solved one of the biggest stresses in life, which is, well, from the obviously financial stress at such a young age. Like some people go their whole life just stressed about bills.
Look, I think...
Or we're not at that stage yet.
Oh, no, look, yes, obviously.
Did you buy the $200,000 car? Are you sweating?
Obviously, yeah, exactly. And that's the point I'm going to make. Because as much as... I think it's all relative. Like,
You all gotta live below-
Like,
yeah.
you've got some
When people have money, they say it's relative. No, mate, it's all relative.
Well, it is. And for example, if you can look at the bottom of the spectrum, which might be a third world country, for example, and they are, for them, like 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, $100 a day is like, that is amazing and I'm doing incredibly well. For them, there's no financial stress there because they're $30 a day profit. For anyone here in Australia living a middle-class lifestyle, $30 a day profit in terms of their expenses are 70 and their profit is 30. Like, you're sweating. You are, like, close to the edge, and even your expenses are really low, so you're probably not living the best life, so as in lifestyle. So I think it's all relative, and, you know, you can be earning $1 million a year, and yet your expenses can be up about half of it's taxed to begin with, and then your expenses are up at, you know,
You're back sweating again.
You're back sweating again. So, as I say, it's all relative. As I say, to my level, yes, I've got it taken care of, but, you know, who's going to make sure that your, you know, expenses and your lifestyle doesn't equate or outrun your income. And I think it's the biggest thing is don't think about how much you're spending. It's important to keep an eye on it, but more importantly too, where your energy should be going is how can you make more? Because you don't get anywhere by trying to shrink or conserve or do any of that sort of stuff. Obviously you do in the short term, but long term, what is rewarding is being able to think, well, yeah, if I can't afford this thing because it's $2,000 a month, how can I feasibly make an extra $2,000 a month? And you don't need to be a world-class entrepreneur to find a way to make $2,000 more a month to achieve whatever you want to do or to buy whatever you want to buy. So you can challenge yourself then to extend yourself and think about how you're going to make the $2,000. That is more rewarding as opposed to telling yourself, I'm never going to get this. I'm never going to buy this because I can never afford it.
I totally agree. Yeah.
Yeah. Mate.
On that note,
Yeah. On that
There we
note,
go.
we're gonna wrap it up
thanks for
here.
coming on.
Mate, you're
Appreciate your
having
time.
me.
Yeah, that's awesome. Mate, great conversation. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. No, thanks, guys, and look forward to listening to the Bob Catter. Was it Bob Catter's son?
Robbie Catter.
Robbie Catter.
Mate, he had a 3-piece suit.
Yeah,
he was looking
he
at
told the
$1
funniest
million.
stories as well. You can tell he's from the bush.
Does he talk like Bob Catter?
He does a little bit. He's just so genuine. Like, it was hard to, like, he came on, I was like, I'm going to rip this guy apart. And then he comes on, he's the most genuine, down-to-earth,
excellent.
nice guy. And he even said he had imposter syndrome and going to
He used to get sick in the stomach before he went in to speak.
because they all knew his dad, and they're like, we're going to rip you apart. And he said it's just a big banter contest.
Yeah, it probably is.
Yeah. Sledging and everything else.
Yeah, you really got to drive in hard, drive the knife to get anything you want. That's what he said.
Yeah.
Would you ever get into politics?
Look, at this stage, no. Certainly not for the next 20 years. Maybe sooner. I don't know.
I feel like you can change more from private
I
enterprise.
was going to say that. I think
Yeah.
you can change more from the outside looking in as opposed to the inside looking out. So I think for me, if I can do as much on the outside, if that, you know, the circle is politics, I'm on the outside of that and can change as much out here, which that circle is huge, fantastic. But, you know, as soon as you move into politics, you're in the circle, you're in it. And as you say, if it involves knife stabbing and all that sort of stuff, it would be a very, very, very interesting and incredibly tough world. So you got to know what you're signing up for.
Question to finish. Would you get Neuralink put in?
What's that? And you were like, oh, is that Elon's?
Yeah. Have you read about it?
I saw the video. That's what he put in the pigs, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, look, I mean, I probably wouldn't want to be the first person to get it put in, but, you know, if it...
He said if you get it, the investment will pay itself back within the first year.
Right. Well, I mean...
Big claims.
You could think an Apple Watch is shooting, you know, rays into your thing, into your arm to read your heart rate. That could be a problem. You know, you could think 5G is a problem. There's many things that could be a problem, so maybe let's just wait and see.
Not a first adopter. All right.
A first adopter, and let's see if anyone else's brain does God knows what. You know, hopefully not explodes or anything like that. You know, you're putting a chip in it, so anything could happen. We'll see, and then maybe, yeah. Would you guys
get
get
the
it?
COVID injection?
Oh, COVID! I don't know.
That one's simple enough.
That's simple enough.
I mean, if I could travel, then yeah, certainly.
Yeah, then be the gateway.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard a counter argument to the kind of Neuralink. The guy's saying it's not saying the bandwidth problem. You're reading your phone, you can't absorb the information fast enough. He's like, we've seen that with speed reading, it doesn't actually increase how much you can take in. And I kind of thought that was an interesting counter argument. He was a neuroscientist as well, but I don't know. In Elon, we trust.
Maybe you could almost say that as much as you might not be able to take more in, you could almost become better at selecting the important information. Because
More focus.
More focus, because I can tell you now the amount of information we'd absorb of which really isn't that relevant. Like, for example, that camera over there, 4K. Like, how relevant is it for me to know that the camera is 4K? Not that relevant at all. And the same could go with information on day-to-day, just in business sense that you do absorbing the stuff that actually counts, and then being able to remember that. That is valuable.
Do you deal with distractions? Like, are you on TikTok? Do you put your phone down? And
Oh yeah, no, I'm an anonymous user on TikTok, so I'll go for
the algorithm's got you sorted.
Yeah, it does actually. Yeah,
Your
because
humour, you're like, how does it know?
half of my mates will send me stuff, so I have to be on there to look at it and have a bit of a laugh. But I think I've been sorted by the Facebook and I'm sure Instagram algorithm definitely. So yeah, I'm probably already halfway there then.
Cool. Thanks, man.
Awesome.
Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Jack.
Excellent. Thanks for having
heaps.
me.